Good evening, everyone. Zeitz MOCAA is proud to have contributed to Unfinished Camp, a project initiated by Unfinished, curated by Hans-Ulrich Obrist and Andras Santos, in collaboration with a global network of art institutions. These include the Australian Centre for the Moving Image in Melbourne, House of Electronic Arts, HEK Basel, Serpentine London, UCCA Centre for Contemporary Art Beijing, the Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art Africa, Sao Paulo, the Shed New York, and the High Line, also in New York. For the initial collaboration, each partnering organization invited 3 artists to produce a short video work or statements that respond to the question, what is the future of art in a decentralized world? These works are currently being featured this week at Unfinished Live, a 3-day event at New York's The Shed and at the Basel at House of Electronic Arts. Zeitz MOCAA commissioned Naomi Lulendo, who's from France and Senegal, the Botswana Pavilion from Botswana, and Helena Wambembe from South Africa to respond to the theme of and who are also the panelists of tonight's talk. We are also very honored to have Tuli Gameze moderate this conversation for us. I'm just going to quickly introduce the artists and our moderator by reading their brief bios. Thulile Gamedze is a reader, writer, drawer living in Johannesburg with an MPhil in Fine Art from the University of Cape Town. Her work is invested in flexible, historical, moving matter like dreams, queerness, Black consciousness, and the water. The Botswana Pavilion was formed in May 2019 by Botswana artists at the Michaelis School of Fine Art. Leokwana Leo Makekene and Kim Karabo Makin, Tebo Petogo, and Tero Makepe. The core team expanded within the same year to include Botswana-based artist Sade Sholane as a core member. Concerned with Botswana's creative development and artistic archive, the lack of Botswana representation in the international arts arena influenced the collective's nomenclature. The Botswana Pavilion alludes to the Venice Biennale, where Botswana is yet to participate. By creating a platform for international visibility and art exchange, they hope to inspire a sustainable creative industry locally. Naomi Lulendo was born in Paris in 1994 and currently lives between Dakar and Paris. Her works are materializations of an interest in misappropriation of words, meanings, objects, and identity. Using the concept of play as a tool to shape and create hybrid objects, images, and text, the artist explores the notions of screen and surface, which constitute both receptacles and windows on social phenomena and individual experiences. The artist's works are impregnated with her biography, made up of dialogues between her Congolese and Guadeloupean origins and of living between France and Senegal. Helena Wambembe lives and works between Johannesburg and Pretoria and was born in Promfit, South Africa in 1994 to Angolan parents who fled the Civil War. Her father was a soldier in the 32 Battalion, a military unit within the South African Defence Force made up primarily of Black Angolan men. The 32 Battalion, Promfit, and her Angolan heritage are dominant themes in Wambembe's work, in which she explores narratives surrounding history and place, interweaving connected symbols and archival material. Wambembe was one of the Bag Factory's 3 2019 David Kolwane Award winners. She recently showed at Accra, Madrid, and participated in the 7th Fakin Globo in Luanda, Angola. Thank you.
There once was a woman. After years of toiling, fighting, liberating, and exhaustion, she decided to pack her things and go to a remote location as she thought her work was done. She decided to plant a mango tree and watch it grow with hope that she would enjoy the fruits of her labor. She planted the seed and watched it grow slowly. She chased away gluttonous birds. She picked each insect that tried to penetrate her mango tree. She did everything possible to protect her tree, as it was her tree. She would sit outside and watch her tree and think of her past comrades and the good old days. Days of toiling, fighting. Days of laughter and hope. She tried to keep the good thoughts and memories, for she did not want to pass on the disappointment and slight anger she had picked up over the years to her mango tree. Soon, the time came when the mango tree was ready to drop its first fruit. With excitement, she prepared a table for her comrades and old friends, for they would enjoy the first fruit together. She waited with the glee of a young girl. She waited, 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 and waited till she grew weary. She waited for her friends and old comrades that never came. But still, she had her mango tree and the first fruit that would drop. Now she waited for the fruit to drop. Waited, waited, waited. She grew frustrated and disappointed. Mad, she tried to shake the mighty tree that she grew and affirmed. But it stayed firm and would not move. The moon was now shining at its brightest and fullest. And there was a glimpse of a smile on her wrinkled lips as she waited. She took a breath, looked at the bright moon for a long while. She sighed and came to remember why she had toiled, fought, and liberated to the point of exhaustion. And perhaps why she had decided to grow a mango tree at the age of 65.
Eyes on me. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. Eyes on me. Eyes on me. Eyes on me. All eyes on me. 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 Eyes on me.
Concerned with Botswana's creative development and artistic archive, the lack of Tswana representation in the international arts arena influenced our name, platform, individual, and collective mission. By providing a space for contemporary Botswana artists like ourselves to explore our national creative identity, as the Botswana Pavilion, we are particularly concerned with the future of art in Botswana. In response to the question, what is the future of art in a decentralized world? We propose Kholokwe, separated intersections. With this video, we unpack a circular metaphor culturally embedded in the manner in which we organize ourselves spatially and socially in Botswana. With a look at the circular intersections that characterize both urban and rural areas in Botswana, the word Kholokwe is used to describe a round shape in Tswana. Whilst a number of these circular intersections currently undergo demolition and reconstruction, this project offers a circular solution that metaphorically acknowledges the center in an active effort to decentralize. In this way, we explore the extent to which our local efforts to decentralize art practice may propose an effective solution to the future of art in a decentralized world. This acknowledges the tensions that exist internationally in separating us at intersections that simultaneously bring us together. And in so doing, we offer a radical solidarity represented here by a circular geometry. In an effort to actively build the future of art in a decentralized world, we present Kholokwe, separated intersections.
I don't think anyone can know what the future of art in a decentralized world will look like, because there are so many art worlds and so many ways decentralization can look like. In the current zeitgeist, it's about blockchain and NFTs, but that's a very different conversation to our context. But technology still plays a role in this. In thinking about the circle metaphor, you can think of the center as the area where power is pooled. This can be structural, institutional, geographical, and myriad of other ways, which relate back to the issue of access. In the current art world, exchange is usually in the form of a radius, that is from the center to a point on the circumference, or the periphery. In a decentralized world, perhaps this very shape changes, and points can be drawn from periphery to periphery, upsetting the focus of power and creating instead infinite constellations which are functioning centers in their own right.
And then trying to translate or elaborate on the thoughts, ideas, processes that we experiment with into a broader or global context, Kolokwe becomes a working model for us that is culturally grounded. And I think in that way gives a decall legitimacy to the way that we work. Kolokwe describes a round shape as not necessarily a circle, and this sort of understanding of like spherical shapes that are unfinished or unbound or undefined to some extent in some way can be seen through many facets of the culture. Our kotlas, our homesteads are spaced out in these circles that are unfinished, and in this way they allow access, they allow a freedom of movement, I would say, and maybe we bring this as a metaphor towards a centrality in inverted commas that doesn't exclude.
Confident and intentional Black African aesthetics. Black African healing. Black African ancestral healing. Black African joy. Black and brown African solidarity. Black African art. Decolonizing Pan-Africanism. Queer allyship. Afro-queer culture. Repatriation. Restitution. Sustainable African art. Black imperfections. Jazz. Anarchy. Anarchy? Anarchy. Communion with nature. Gatekeepers open the gate.
As the Botswana Pavilion, we acknowledge that we seem to be shifting towards a more decentralized art world in the advent of the digital age. However, we still believe that by and large, we exist in a centralized world. Therefore, we must always be aware, analyze, and critique the center to find solutions to move away from it. In our particular Southern African context, we believe in not building on top of or reforming outdated and colonial pre-existing institutions and systems, but creating our own for the future. As technology is ever-changing, it gives the illusion of being a malleable space of endless possibilities, but there is still gatekeeping, which is structural and geographical. There is no one solution on how a decentralized art world will look, nor will it be concrete. It will be ever-changing as technology and the systems that govern it are ever-changing as well.
Hello, audience who I'm imagining because I can't actually see. My name is Tuli and I'm going to be moderating this discussion with these wonderful cultural workers, artists, collectives, So I guess I'll start with just a very brief observation when I was watching these videos that that struck me, and that was this kind of collective, instead of kind of getting washed up in this idea of the future, technology, a decentralizing world, all the artists almost seem to turn to already present kind of orbital technologies that in some cases, like in Naomi's work, she talks about the sun and the orbit around the sun as a technology, and kind of uses these various screens as portals to reference between ancient kind of planetary technologies and kind of more recent digital technologies. And then Helena is also kind of, in my mind, interested in some sort of time cycle. And this old woman ends up sort of waiting forever. And we're kind of asked to find something in that act of waiting, instead of anticipating some sort of end or some sort of linear success story where the fruit comes. We kind of have to sit with the tree growing, and that's kind of just it. And then with the Botswana Pavilion, they're kind of onto this Kholokwe model of the world, which is circular and also an older technology of circular living and pushing from the circle outwards. So for me, that kind of start of orbits and time, it was quite curious that everyone is kind of operating in this loop together. And I wanted to just open up the discussion, firstly to kind of talk about what people feel about this theme, which is, what is the future of art in a decentralized world? So I wanted to start with you, Naomi, because in the text about your video, you basically talk about the fact that this theme, the future of art in a decentralized world, is already biased from its conception. So I think that's a great place to start, if you could tell us more about what you mean on this. And also welcome.
Yes, hello Tuli, and hello everybody. So when I was referring to a biased concept of decentralization, I was referring to the fact that the question itself within the heart will is always decentralized when it is brought to, I don't want to say us, but when it's brought to kind of Western point of view. The people and the institution and even the initiative that we are part is an initiative from the Western world. And even if it's an initiative made for giving some possibilities, extending the views and creating connections, it's still a proposition and a project that envision itself as a center, as a possibility. And this is why I was talking about the situation and the position. You have to be aware of your position in the world to understand the meaning and the sense of center and to be centralized. So I wanted to refocus the fact that the center could be anywhere depending of our position on the world, like geographically, but mostly that we are not the center. Earth is not the center, to take the principle as its source. And that's how I just thought about this biased concept of centralization, decentralization.
Well said. Yeah, when I got the brief for the talk, I think that was the first kind of thing that I was wondering about as well. So I wanted to also ask the Botswana Pavilion, because I know you kind of take your name as an almost ironic take on the Venice conception of national pavilions. But I'm interested now in how you think about, I guess, the idea of a nation in relation to this idea of decentralization, and what is for you important about national identity. Is it relevant, or is it kind of an ironic position to take? Anyone can answer.
I guess I can go first. Hi everyone. I hope I'm audible through my earphones. Okay. I think the name of the collective in general is both kind of tongue-in-cheek and also a loose ideal in a way, like it kind of operates both ways. Specifically to this project, the nation in a decentralized art world or world, I think something like the Botswana Pavilion is kind of like a Trojan horse in a way. Like I think as Naomi was talking about positionalities, like when we started, we were, Botswana students in Cape Town. That kind of formed a cell or a nucleus of sorts in this other place where we were now within, I don't know, this a center, if you want to call Cape Town a center of like the art world. So I think the name Botswana Pavilion in that case, you're using the language or the terminology of the center as a way to sort of infiltrate, even though you were also using it as with a kind of ironic bent to it. And I think in Botswana, when we operate in Botswana, it's kind of like an umbrella for people with a shared past, with a shared heritage, knowledge base, knowledge systems. If you want to look at history as intellectual property, like people who have this in common to kind of work through this organization in a way. So I think in general, the nation, or the idea of a nation, in some instances, is an ideal. But I think as we are looking at the present, even though this question is about the future, the nation, and you take that further to ideas of nationalism, that has inherent problematics that come with it, like, xenophobia, racism, all those kinds of things. So that's a kind of acknowledgement of what we're currently dealing with now. Like we have to acknowledge that first before we can kind of move forward, I think. Yeah.
Cool. I guess it's like the antithesis before the thesis. Or before the synthesis. Does anyone else from the Botswana Pavilion, who I've just realized I shouldn't really call BP because it gives like a wrong idea, but that's what it says in my notes. But does anyone else want to speak to that question of nation and decentralization?
Yeah, I think I'll add a couple notes or nuggets. I think we're also, we were very much interested in questioning what the idea of a Tswana person means. Who was the first Tswana person? And there's so many different types of Tswana people. And then, when you're born with an identity, a passport, you don't know what came before you. You learn it later. And then weirdly enough for us, like we had to go somewhere else to learn a lot more about what's happened before from where we're from, which is heartbreaking. It shouldn't have to be like that. But in any case, you're born with this umbrella that like, I'm a Botswana person, I'm a Botswana person, black, blue, and white flag. But why? You know? And I think we're of that generation that it's been a few generations now since Botswana has been independent. And now a lot of those things have to be questioned. Like, for example, it's in the video, the Khotla system. The Khotla system is a mainstay in Tswana culture. It's beloved and it's respected, but it has many flaws. Like most recently, there was some controversy with women having to wear skirts to go and get vaccinated. And, you know, that's an issue. That's an infringement on a woman's rights. And public flogging still happens as a form of punishment, where they'll put you in the center of the Khotla for doing some wrongdoings, and you'll get publicly flogged. And again, like that's a past generational way of dealing with conflict and keeping peace. But such a thing doesn't work now. Not everybody's going to agree with that. So at what point does culture become detrimental to the next generation that's inheriting it? And, you know, at what point do we completely go away from something and adopt something new? Or, you know, are we losing our culture? That's a constant push and pull that we have, because again, like, you know, language is dying. The way we dress and look at each other is changing, but there's certain things that people want to keep. And the Khotla is one of those things that I'm giving an example of, but it has its issues, it has its flaws. So you always have to be questioning these things of like, you know, why is this like that? Maybe we do need to change. Yeah, so I think, I mean, we're all very different people that came from the same place, and we're concerned with different things. And the makeup of who we are is also very different. So I think we were having these conversations in ourselves, and now we're having them together, and we're bouncing things off of each other. So I think, yeah, that's kind of, there's a common mission in the end to like maybe one day get to the Venice Biennale probably, and stuff like that. But it's a lot more than that. It's about questioning who we are, why we're like this, why there's this black, blue, and white flag, why there's the zebra, why there's the this. And if you don't go into that homogenization, can you be a part of the culture? Can you be a part of the society? And why not? Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay, bringing in some controversy into the mix. You raised some very interesting points. And I think in regards to this idea of decentralization, it's obviously so fascinating that in order to centralize yourselves, as you're saying, you all had to first move to Cape Town. And I know, Kim, we've talked a lot, and with you, Tiro, about learning about the history of Medu Ensemble and the fact that that happened first in Cape Town in order to come and do that research back home. And I wonder if anyone else from the Botswana Pavilion has anything to add just on this idea of decentralization, and where you feel like we are at this moment as we jump into this conversation.
I think just on the topic of research and learning from outside, I think it's interesting because just as like the shape itself, like you have to leave the center in order to understand and observe it, right? I think for myself, just realizing that most of the texts that are available, especially about non-male life existence in Botswana, is written by non-males who have left the country. They are kept and housed outside the country. Our first anthology came out and it was printed in KZN. And like on and on. So I do think it does say something about distance and observation, but I think that's also something to reconsider and restructure when we think about decentralizing how we hold like knowledge of certain spaces.
Mm-hmm. And interesting, almost wherever you jump, there's always this other space that we're kind of aspiring to. So South Africa occupies this very problematic position on the continent, but then South Africa has aspirations of, Venice. And, there's this constant deferring of one's position to another center. I don't know what the climactic moment is, whether it's America or, what that idea of center is, but it almost seems like a false route in many ways. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, Helena, can you talk about centralized and decentralized history making as it appears in your video?
When I thought of the video, or when I was thinking about the work and the story, I think the idea of a centralized and decentralized world for me, besides the history and the politics, goes down to the story and the story making, which happened on the ground with the people. And I think that's how the character is born, a woman. Besides, even if we move from one center to another or to no center at all, there's always going to be a fight and a toil. And my interest is usually the woman, the Black woman, the African woman on the continent who deals with these constant pulls and push of politics, of history. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It does. I wonder if you can talk more visually about, first of all, the costume of your main character, and secondly, the process of that shadow and light that you're using throughout.
I play in the dark. So I am a person who has embraced the idea of darkness. I am a highly melanated woman. And being in South Africa, which is weird also, I had always been pointed out to be too dark. And it's part of the process of accepting the darkness and playing in the darkness. Some people have commented that my work is very heavy and very dark. So it's like embrace all aspects of it. I think for me, Blackness, darkness is that absorption of light and being the light itself. And play it. So with history, for me, there's always those shadows, those corners that we don't really go, that is not in the grander narrative. And I like playing with those. It's playing with silhouettes, with the gray areas. And the character is based on a performance that I did in 2018, quite a while back now, looking at the notion of Shinganji, and which goes back to Angolan tradition of masquerade initiation. Shinganji is usually something, or a being that passes on discipline, that takes like the story that is given was that it takes boys away in its belly who are not initiated, and some would come out and some wouldn't. And I think I used the buffalo because it was the insignia of the 3-2 battalion, and I saw that as a kind of Shinganji, as a thing that meant death to a lot of people who were part of it, not just the soldiers, but children and women who were Black and who made part of the mechanism of the battalion and the workings of the battalion, not just in battlefield. And it has evolved to many other things, because the more research I do, the more conversations I have with people, it's like the more the Shinganji evolves to so many elements of life, of love, a being that is here and not here, lonely and yet not, longing, you know, like I like playing with those notions. And it was, I think I had always used a mask, and it took going to Luanda, or returning to Luanda, to kind of really embody this being, and also negotiate history within the space that history has taken place in. And also Luanda is like another dynamic in terms of the Angolan Civil War, the border wars that South Africa took part in, the attempted invasion, and it being a neutral space for people, but also it being the central space of Angola, actually, and the central space of the Civil War. So those were interesting moments for me.
Thanks. I want to kind of come back to what you're talking about with kind of Luanda as a center, and the way that your character decides to move away, and some of that significance. But I also want to give others the opportunity to comment or offer questions around Helena's work. I was particularly interested, is Naomi here? I think I just can't see all the people. But Naomi, like in your video and in the text accompanying your video, you talk about ecological time, and in the video you kind of reference the sun and the orbit around the sun, and you talk about how in nature we have never been centralized. Oh, Naomi is just reconnecting now. Okay, so I'll jump into all of that. Oh, you're back. Okay, so I was just saying, I was talking about how you're interested in ecological time. And you're interested in the fact that we are not centralized, and we never have been, because we belong to the broader system of the solar system. And as a solar, if we kind of identify planetarily rather than with our species or with any particular life on the earth, if we identify ourselves as a planet, then our identity is perpetually decentered and simply just orbiting around the sun. And that is one system and one technology that nothing means anything without. So I wanted to try and move from the solar system into these other kinds of social systems. And Helena kind of talks about the fact that women often who are fighting for liberation are often pushed to such a point that they eventually surrender. And I want to talk about where you see the meeting points between, I suppose, the ecological systems and like human-made political systems or oppressive systems. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So about the sorry, can you just repeat the two words you wanted in that question?
I was just wondering what you made of the connection between like the ecological systems that you're concerned about in your practice and in this work, and systems of oppression, like more human-based social systems.
Yeah, thank you. I got it
Sure.
now. When I started to think about the kind of synopsis of the video, I was thinking a lot about introspection and about the ego. And when we look at a pictorial way of the ego, like when we envision the ego, there is always this image of a burning sun, you know, like when you're really egocentric, you're looking at yourself and you feel like you're the sun. And it's a metaphor to talk about the fact that you think that you're the center. And we have this tendency as human being to feel that we should be the center, and mostly that we should be superior. There is always this will to be superior to anything, any spaces, any human beings, any like the nature, the all those things that make the world and how universe. We want to control it. We want to be the master of it. And when you start the meditation, and normally you start the meditation with the Sun Salutation, and it's funny that this is called like that. You are greeting the sun, and you are also going inward. So this is why I called my video "All Eyes on Me." It was a play on words with the expression that is expressing the big ego trip of going inside and showing yourself and willing to shine and to mesmerize everybody. And it was like the antithesis of going inward and finding yourself in the calm and um, the quietness of the contemplation. So you have kind of the sun, but the sun is never depicted, and it was a choice because when you film the sun, you see nothing. You only see light, and it only blur the screen. So you have to have a glimpse of it. So you have a sense of the sun, but not the sun. And the light is important, and light is key. We talk about enlightenment when we are reaching at a point of meditation, and we're talking about sunset, sunlight. So in all, it's all about light. And I feel like we should just feel as we are alive, not superior, not inferior, but we are, and we are a part of a big something. And it's not utopian. I don't feel like that, but some people will say that. It's important to refocus on the things. And this is why I wanted to have this kind of almost digital big screen that could also be a kind of solar panel, bringing energy, recharging energy to give it back, but also be a screen, but off screen, you know. So it's a projection of yourself. It could be a portal so you can travel. I wanted to have like a bit of mystery, a bit of fiction, but something really practical and very simple, and not bring too much technology inside the process, because mostly I'm talking about the process as an artist. This is why I brought the puzzle. It's part of my practice, but also it allows me to give a sense of the screen, the digital screen. And in the same time, I wanted to talk about the artist inspiration. I don't know for the other artists, and I would like them to respond to me. Like, I would like you guys to tell me how you feel. But when I have inspiration, there is some days I feel just empty, and there is other days I just feel as if I have a big light inside, and it's just coming out of me, and I can control it, and I can just do something. And so I was trying to translate this state, but to be really in the contemplative narrative.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that sets up quite an interesting relationship between this idea of going in and that not being an indulgent process, but also Helena's character going away. But I want to just attend to Sade had their hand up and also Helena. So
Yes, please.
go for it. Yes, please.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I'll just be on audio because, yeah. I just also want to package what I'm about to say as I'm really going to ramble in response to what everyone has been saying, because that's also my form of being practical about decentralizing my art and life in general, right? Great. So I love what Naomi was saying about the ego and the sun and all of that. I was thinking, yes, we can spend all our energy decentralizing and decolonizing, because to me, they're like siblings, you know? We can spend all our energy doing that, but then what are you going to replace it with? So we also, well, a recent word that came to my attention, or rather, I recently came across this word. Hey, it's core. I recently came across this word called re-indigenizing, right? And that feels like a wonderful sort of catch-all description of what we would replace what was very colonial, you know, with re-indigenize things. So in order to even re-indigenize, we would have to decentralize our own egos, as in like question where even our own ideas as artists come from, because we can claim that this person taught you, or you got this from that book. That in itself becomes it reflects just how the idea that you have is not from you, how you also need to be quite aware of how more impactful art making, well, this is more like a chat to myself now, more impactful art making requires one to unpack themselves, decentralize themselves in order to adjust to the rapid changes. I'll stop there, thanks.
I think that's really interesting. It reminds me, I mean, I don't know very much about this, but I know like one part of Buddhist philosophy is about like disidentification, disidentifying with your body, with your feelings, and with your thoughts, and finding the layers of stuff that exists beneath that. So decentering oneself, yeah, it's quite interesting that this is the kinds of ways that this all lands. Go for it, Helena.
Don't you just love words in English and the things it comes up with? Re-indigenizing. So first I heard of that.
Yeah,
and
to
be honest,
I got it in an essay that I was marking today. Re-indigenization. Like,
I find it a bit funny because we come up with like decentralization, decolonization, but it's still very much. There's still even the idea of even the idea of indigenous. Where does that word come from? And yeah, I found that a bit funny. But to what Naomi said, returning to self and getting rid of the ego, I think it goes back to community. Going back to a community and getting rid of this idea of the individual. I really respect collectives. You guys are doing amazing with Botswana Pavilion, because it's again bringing the center back to the people. And I think when I thought of a mango tree, it's something that takes long to grow. It takes years, but it can grow big. It takes work, and it will provide shade. It will provide food, not just for the one person, but hopefully for a lot of people. And I think going back to community is very key. And maybe it's like, we also have to look, how do we go back into community? Do we create our own little communities, not not for praise, but for really to taking care of one another. I think in my career, I've been lucky to have found a number of communities and people that have helped me get to where I am. So I think it's maybe we should just go back to our community, like, and maybe not even use the word go back, because it's so, there's a lot of turmoil I feel with such words. Instead of trying to like re-indigenize or like decolonize, because we live in such a different world from just 20 years, 2 years ago to where we are living in now. It's so different. And how are we going to adapt with what we have, with technologies, with knowledge, with the English, with the academic language that we have? How do we now move forward and go back to community, which is often not easy because we have the ego. There's always someone who would want to bring in on their own ideas. So yeah, and yeah.
I'm completely with you on I think sometimes what these words can do is that they propose that we need to go somewhere. And I think exactly what you're saying is really what it is. You've had community and you have community already in your life. So this isn't so much about we need to move forward into community. It's more reckoning with the models that we already have and being with them. And to take kind of guidance from your video, that it's not about deferring to the future. It's not about deferring to the time when the fruit comes, but rather like what is there in this moment of being with a plant that's growing, and what is there in that kind of labor. So I think, yeah, it's quite interesting. And I'm also like looking at our notes at the same time and how we've basically covered everything, but like in a very decentralized order. But I'm glad that you bring us now back to the Botswana Pavilion, because I do want to also talk more about this video. It would be nice to hear a little bit about the process, first of all, how you got these high shots. And then the other thing that I found quite interesting was how calming and soothing this video was to watch. There was like one frantic moment, and then also this moment where Sade's like, anarchy, anarchy, anarchy. there was these like slight insertions of like something else, but overall there was this really kind of calming, very like present and grounded feeling. So even though you're talking about the future, we're kind of quite invested in exactly what's happening now. So I want to hear more about like how you came to this like visual energy and how you see the tonal relationship of the film with what you guys are talking about in it.
Let me just briefly add, I'm sure Kim and Tara will also add a few things here. I found it very important to include visuals of a village, the village I live in specifically, because it's a wonderful village. And because I was thinking, I'd like for the future Botswana, or just future people, because also the name Botswana is tricky. I like the future people to be able to, of this village, those who have ties to this village, to be able to Google the village and see something positive about where they know they're from, or where they were told this is where your people are from. Do you get me? And I wanted it to be free of, as much as possible, to be free of the that colonial, white, anthropological, violent lens. Even though we are using their with air quotes, their tools, in terms of the drone and what else do you use? Yeah, the drone, really, to capture the aerial views. I just felt like it was important for that seed to be planted. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on that. Yeah, we used the drone, and I think another thing, talking about moving away from the center and leaving the ego. Whenever we do get to collaborate and come together as the Botswana Pavilion, it's like it's an opportunity for me to play. So I had never used the drone before, and I had met some guys who are able to do that. So when this opportunity came, I was like, okay, I have an excuse to use this thing or to try it. Whether or not it's gonna be used or not, I was just like, I want to really use a drone. You know what I mean? Because I'm not sure how it is for Naomi or Helena, but in individual practice, there's so much expectation over doing this and doing that. And once you make something that might be successful, or people are starting to look at it, whoever that person is and whoever's looking to collect or buy it or put it somewhere, it changes the expectation now of what you're gonna do the next time. And all of a sudden there's now a certain type of pressure or burden on making the next thing and the next thing. So for me, doing this unfinished camp initiative it was fun. It was a fun time to be able to talk in a different way that maybe I do in my own individual practice, because of some of the overbearing expectations on it. And that's one of the fun things about being in a collective as well, is that it's a collective voice. So it's not just me. And I enjoy that, not being the center of something. Like, I enjoy being in a group, in a circle, and that everybody contributes. So again, speaking to the sort of the meditation. So I think that's the first thing we were kind of just establishing, is like, what are these visual symbols that we have around us that we can use as metaphors to talk about decentralization, decolonization, these kind of like pyramid structures where there's people who are occupying. I mean, the brief says that, you know, we want to build an ethical world and all these kinds of things. And we're inviting artists to have a seat at the table. We had to be invited to have a seat at the table. You know what I mean?
Did it actually say those words?
It does. I can read it. About unfinished camp, to radically reimagine and help build a more ethical, equitable digital future. Artists must have a seat at the table. It's an invitation for us.
Oh, I see. Artists must have a seat at the table. Okay.
Yeah, and just thinking again about, you know, these suns and circles and things.
Yeah.
What if there wasn't a table to begin with? You know, because we have a seat at the table, but are we getting a slice of the pie? That's another thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, in terms of the pacing of the video as well, I think the dialogue of what we were saying was very important. And again, like this kind of, I don't want to say democratic, but a democratic way of speaking, and everybody gets the chance to say what they feel about this topic and how they want to say it. And I also enjoy, I really, really like that side part. Anarchy. I really enjoy that. And when we were, I mean, in terms of talking about the practical process, like, we were all a bit nervous about, like, oh, you know, am I saying the right thing? Kind of, but like, studies came, and it was, like they say, this rambling kind of, but it's beautiful. I really enjoyed that, and it came so spontaneously when we were doing the recording sessions for the video. So Yeah, I just wanted to have that visual circle of that transformation of these roads and how they're changing, and these old existing models of a road and the industrialization and how things are changing based on, I mean, the problem was created by allowing too many import foreign cars into Botswana, and now there's too many cars on the road during a rush hour, and now they have to change. So what does that mean? Like when you're changing something like that, are you building on top, or are you destroying and then you build a new thing completely? So these are things that I think we're always thinking about. There's pre-existing institutions, and they're liked and loved, but they also have to be passed down. That's the other thing. I mean, this brief was inviting young artists especially. So it's saying that like people do die. That's a fact of life. So some things have to be passed down from artist to artist, from curator to curator, from gallerist to gallerist, etc., etc. So what is that structure gonna look like for the next people that come into something? What are you gonna leave behind? Sort of
yeah. Thanks, Tero. I'm just gonna pin for this moment, metaphorically, this notion of a seat at the table, and that you mentioned that one day you guys will go to Venice. And I'm hoping instead maybe just for a Bots Biennale, But anyway, Kim, you have your hand, and I'm gonna go to you and then gonna come back real brief to Naomi's work and then go to Q&A.
All right, cool. We've discussed a lot of things here, and I hope you guys can hear me all right. I wanted to just touch on like Sadi's tonal portion of the video that we spoke about, and like Tero said, it was almost something quite interesting for us, because I think this notion of decentralization within art practice and also the future of art is something that we've actually been discussing for a long time, because there isn't a center for art in Botswana. And so the Botswana Pavilion kind of came out of trying to create a space for us to discuss what that might even look like. So this conversation around the future of art and actively decentralizing, I think, is something that we've been doing for a long time. And so quite organically throughout our conversations, now it's time for us to record for this video, and now we're have these very prepared responses to the question. And Sadi's response took a more poetic response to it, which I think kind of tied together the sorts of conversations that we're having, because in some ways where we are constantly jumping between the center of art that exists, that we all acknowledge collectively, and then actively moving away from that. And I think that's why this circular metaphor that we refer to means acknowledging that even in an effort to decentralize, there is a center that exists, and in an effort to move away from that, we have to acknowledge what that looks like, and kind of constantly be in conversation with that in order for us to really imagine what the future of art looks like, right? So I quite liked Sadi's mention of, I think it was re-indigenize, and it made me think of Walter Magnolo's notion of relinking or delinking from the colonial matrix of power, and then creating a space to relink or re-exist within our own parameters, and what that might look like. And so I might even want to add another word there to our vocab list today of dislocation, because I think in the way that we formed as the Botswana Pavilion, our dislocation from Botswana gave us the opportunity to imagine a new future for Botswana. And so where there is a center of art that exists in Cape Town, we were able to, with our distance, imagine what that might look like within a local context. And to some extent, that meant acknowledging more traditional Setswana cultural ideas that would maybe make art more relatable or accessible for a Botswana population. So I think that's also why we purposely did not directly translate the word Kholokwe, because there's a very specific circular metaphor and understanding of how people socialize and spatialize themselves in Botswana that we're directly trying to access and unpack what that looks like. And so I know you said you're going to take it back to Naomi's work. It's something that I was thinking about with respect to this notion of like the sun as central to the solar system. So in Setswana, the word for sun is letsatsi, which is also the same for the word day. So it's something that I've been thinking about in my independent practice with respect to how the sun in Setswana or in Botswana could be considered central to daily life. And so I think this notion of like unpacking like very culturally specific ideas of what the center even looks like within that context is an interesting idea for us to translate like within this global collaborative space. Is there room for us to all access the center, and does our notion of like decentralizing look the same for us all? Because I think it's quite context specific. Yeah, that's all I have to say for right now.
I mean, yeah, even the idea that the human body or the material world is the center is not like, in terms of like Ubuntu, there's like, that's just one of like 3 realms, you know, what is gone and what is yet to come. And so that there isn't even the idea that this world is the central world, and our bodies are central bodies. Yeah, so I did just want to come back to one thing in Naomi's work, and we will get to the Q&As. I can see 3 questions. But that thing I wanted to come to was the relationship between the sun-centered system and the kind of micro symbol of these puzzle pieces that's in this video, but also across your work, puzzles and puzzle pieces appear. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the significance of those.
Okay. To begin with, I really like what you said, Kim, about the dislocation, and also about the fact that about the center thing, and the fact that yes, we should realize that you are a part of something and just a part of something. And to go back to the puzzle, it is this. I began to make jigsaw puzzles because I was searching for models, black models, and it was very specific. For an exercise at school, I was searching for black models in magazines, as I really love fashion. And I discovered that every time the black model was depicted, it was only with a kind of very monochromic background. And I decided to search more about that. And I realized that where the white body was just depicted with objects, you know, objects to dress the body, the black body was an object. So it was part of the objectification of the pictorial objectification. So I was wondering how it could be. And we know that fashion is a really white field, no question. So I decided to take those pictures and to blur them. And it begins like that because, you know, when you do a puzzle, you're waiting to discover an image. You are supposed to find out what it is afterward. And what I did is I blurred the picture and make a puzzle. And then I took out one piece. And this one piece was nowhere to be found, or put on a platter, like cotton platter, but uncovered with silver painting, like a very kind of luxurious look alike. And it was a piece in itself. And I was questioning the fact that we puzzled as human beings. We puzzled. We are born, and then we're living, and then we ask questions to ourselves about why we there, why we end up on this family, why this happened to us, and all these puzzling moments make our lives. But is the missing piece very necessary to grasp a whole picture of who we are? I was like, it's not. And it was also echoing with the concept of the island, because for me, we are all islands. As I was saying, the island is this moment where the lava is coming out of the center of the world, like which is a burning center, came out on the surface, and with the collision of the two, it creates a platform. This platform become the earth, and then the earth becomes a continent. But before the continent, it's an island, and the concept of island is creating the archipelago. For me, Botswana pavilion could be taken like that, as well as the lady on the video of Elena. There is the individual, and the individual is going to meet other individual, and it's not going to be a continent. We cannot merge together. Ubuntu is that too. We are one, but we are also ones. And so we gather, and this gathering creates something. It's the same with the puzzles. This is why I choose the puzzle as a picture to represent the solar panel, and to represent also the artistic gesture, and to come back to what Sadie was saying about the artist, and the fact to be an artist, to consider yourself an artist. We consider ourselves a lot of things, and we sometimes too seriously, but we are mostly. So this is a state of being, and puzzle gives you back to that. It's playing, so you play. I wanted to bring the playfulness of being alive, and we all played in our videos with perception, with the round, with the circle, with the position, with the wide gaze, mostly.
Thanks, Naomi. I think that's a great way to kind of bring together everyone's work of this kind of disassembling and reassembling images that themselves may not even be clear once we have all the pieces. So we are close to the end, and Sadie was saying that they'd like to answer some of these questions that we have. Can you guys all see the questions?
Yes.
Okay, so would you like to go ahead, Sadie, and speak to the question that you would like to answer, and I will pin it so everyone can see.
Am I audible? Because I think I managed to respond. The last question we got there. I think I did the technology thing.
The last question. Oh, did you pin it?
I think I clicked on answer live. I thought it would forward it to you. Yeah.
Okay, yes, this is a spicy one. Go for it.
My answer will be short, honestly. It goes back to what I heard Tebe mentioning about a Trojan horse, right? I like that vision analogy thing, because the idea of how sometimes we are leaving the status quo in the hands of men. I'm like, sometimes you just need to buy time, let them keep thinking that's what we are doing. That's my answer.
Sometimes we were here this whole time.
Exactly.
High five.
Does anyone else want to pin a specific question? We have, how do we build our own tables? Okay, Helena, go for it.
I think we should move away from this notion of a table, guys. Last time people sat to the table, they divided Africa for themselves, and we're here now. This seat at the table, and then it comes back to like the whole idea of centralization, Solange seats at the table. Everyone, like popular culture right now, is talking about a seat at the table. Whose table? Why? You might. Jesus sat at a table and he died 3 days after or so. I'm just saying. But I don't think a table is necessary. Let's sit on the floor in a circle and play hand clap games and sing. we need to move away from this idea, and very pop culture idea of a seat at the table. And a seat at the table is a seat at the capitalist table, a seat at the patriarchal table. Then nothing is happening. We're just repeating the same cycle over and over again. I suggest let's sit under a mango tree on the floor and enjoy nature. Yeah.
I hear that. Yeah, this aspirational narrative, like let's get there, you know, with never an interest in the spaces we do actually have around us, and how we can just reframe the ways we talk about those spaces instead of being caught in like, you know, the table one day. Okay, so we still have, could you speak on your experience with the unfinished initiative? And appropriately, we probably won't finish answering this question, but would anyone like to chip in there?
Hi, I'm back again. Is it okay if I answer it, guys?
Go for it.
So far so good. I must say, I think it only hit me now how big in terms of the art world it is actually. Because I think I was more focused on just making the work, and the process of making it, I managed to collaborate with an amazing filmmaker in Angola.
Mm-hmm.
I met new amazing artists within the continent, and curators and people. But the experience has been good, I think. For me personally, has been good. I think it gave me not more trust, but more confidence that my stories are valid, that, you know, people's stories are valid and it should be told, and we're telling it, and we get to share it with a bigger audience. Yeah, it was fun. I had fun.
That's good to hear. So I don't know if this call is going to just end automatically at 7:30, but I do know we need to be done by 7:30. So just in case that happens, I just want to say thanks to you all for this really nice discussion. Had such a bad day and it actually cheered me up a lot. So thanks for that. And it was nice to see everyone and hear about these really cool orbital works. And yeah, I'm looking forward to what else comes out of this. So yeah, thanks to the MOCAA and to Hans Ulrich Obrist, I suppose. I'm not really sure how to do this. But anyway, I don't know if this call is going to automatically end, but I suppose now would be a great time to say goodbye. So thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Tuli, and thanks to the MOCAA. I see they've just dropped a note to say it won't end automatically if there is anything else you'd like to discuss further, but I think we've touched on just about everything. And I'd like to just echo what Helena mentioned, that it's been a great experience to be a part of this like global initiative, and a pleasure to be a part of this discussion. So thanks for hosting us, Tuli.
Sure thing. Somewhat. Cool. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.